I'm 39 Now by Philip Ireland. Warning: whilst I've tried to keep the content light, this book does talk about anxiety and autism, feelings of dread, and low mood instances. It may not be an easy read for some. Please make sure you have something funny to watch or to listen to before going any further, just to take the edge off once you're finished reading or listening to this book. If you or someone you know is potentially struggling with anxiety or low mood depression, please speak to a health professional and arrange some therapy sessions. Talk to your friends or family, seriously. Tell them what's going on inside. I promise this will help you in the long run. Preface: anxiety and autism are a big part of my life, and I've come to live with them, to listen when they prod at me, and not to let them control me 100% of the time. You'll read and find out about how they developed in my life, how I stopped them from prodding any further, and how they live with me today. This isn't to say that you will never be without them. I don't suffer most days now. But on the days when you feel down, are unwell, or when it isn't going quite right, anxiety and autism can add an extra layer that clouds things further. Over the past 39 years, I've learnt some things that catch people out. Some of the issues that aren't really issues or bad problems are the ones that I've actually liked having around. I've stared problems straight in the face, gotten hot and bothered, and sometimes even wished I didn't have to live this life. All because I came up against something that I didn't have the tools to solve and didn't think anyone would or could help me. We only get one life, and once it's gone, it's game over. Unlike games, we can't rewind or have another go. What we can do whilst we live it though, is have a player 2 or 3 or 4, change our levels and defeat the bad problems for better ones. For instance, we all moan about our jobs. Sometimes it's a problem. However, it's likely a better problem than your last job, so that's something. It shows that you've moved forward onto different things, to push past those other problems and pick up new ones on the way. Solving old problems and picking up new things keeps you creative, keeps that brain working, and moves you forward with your mental health. Although it might not feel like it, those small wins really do add up to something big. I've written this book to remind me how far I've come. Everyone has anxiety and even autism to a certain point, and that's a healthy thing. Citation is needed on this one, as no one can agree on it, but I think it's more healthy than unhealthy at this point. Hopefully, this book can give you the extra bit of knowledge and confidence to push forward and to get started solving these new problems and gain a better understanding of your mental health. Section 1. My story. 1. When you wake up in the morning and something doesn't feel right. When you wake up during the night shaking all over. When you drive the car and wish you had already arrived. When you don't have an appetite but know you need to eat. When it's dark and you want to curl up in a ball. When it's light but all you want is to hide from people. When it's daytime and you're so tired it may as well be 3 AM. When you're at work but want everyone else to be at home. When someone asks you how you are and you just say, "I'm fine." When things keep piling up and your stack of things to do starts to wobble. Most people think of anxiety as a made-up thing that either doesn't exist or is exaggerated beyond all proportion. After all, it's not like a broken leg that can be seen in a cast or a wound from a cut. So let me tell you now, they're wrong. It is true that anxiety itself, that single thing, is very hard to spot. Our brains and bodies do some magic to heavily disguise what's going on inside. A lot of times, in our daily lives, our brains don't have time to catch up on the things we do, the experiences we face, or the problems we encounter. Sleeping can help the brain, and some people experience vivid dreams of problem solving, experience handling, and all sorts of things whilst they sleep. The issue with this though, is that it varies by person, as we're not all built the same. Chemically, your brain needs extra time to figure things out, to settle, and to understand what just happened. Think of it like watching a car chase in a movie. So much just happened in about 30 seconds, you need to watch it 5 more times to figure out why that guy got shot and why that one escaped. Time and energy are put into your brain, and what you need out of it is an organised set of memories, feelings, emotions and events. 2. My beginning with anxiety was probably like some others. Most of what I had to deal with originated from my childhood, moving locations, and generally missing out on parts of growing up. Until this time, my brain had carefully been boxing up all of the things it couldn't manage. The triggers, the sensations, the emotions, and the thoughts all went in the box and just sat in the corner of my brain. I did know something was wrong, but I didn't know it was on the scale and what it actually was. One day, in the middle of March, I started to feel unwell. We were due to move house in a month, and I remember packing things up ready for labelling. I had to stop at some point and take stock of what my body was telling me. I felt shaky, shivery, and couldn't concentrate. I stopped packing boxes after this one, until that evening when I felt normal again. April came, and I was still having days where I just didn't feel right. I was worried about the house move, but we were ready. Things were moving, and I knew that I shouldn't have been in this much of a state over that. In late April, moving day was upon us. Whilst the movers moved our things from house to house, I was in charge of building furniture at the destination house. I was by myself for most of the day, being interrupted every couple of hours or so when the movers turned up with more boxes. That day, I realised it was more than just the move. My worried brain was telling me something was wrong all day. That night I barely slept. I hated the new house and wanted the old one back. Things weren't settled yet, boxes everywhere, and I could hear loud traffic from my window, something I'd never experienced before. Turns out, that hearing of the low rumble of traffic could have been an autism trait. But at the time, I didn't know that. I just thought it was distracting. Come May's arrival, I started having the odd day off work. I felt sick, didn't want to eat, and had nauseous and headaches. As June rolled in, I'd be home 2 days a week, then 3 in July, not eat, feel the lowest I'd ever felt, and isolate myself from my family. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I didn't want them to see me with this, especially since I couldn't tell them what was actually wrong. By the time August arrived, every day was a struggle. I'd struggle to get up, eat, maybe go to work. My work emails, which I'd typically send around 200 a month, had dropped to around 30 or so. My work was suffering massively, and my bosses knew something was wrong. One afternoon when I was at home, I was lying in bed and needed the loo. I got up shaking as I went to the loo. At this point, I knew I wanted it to stop. To stop feeling low, stop feeling lonely, stop the stomachache, stop the low mood swings. I really felt that I didn't have the capability to do anything and was scared of everything in my life. At this point, I knew that I needed help very much, but I didn't know what to do. A short while later, I called my wife up to the bedroom and experienced my first full-on panic attack. I couldn't breathe and my chest was on fire. I couldn't think and my mind was completely gone. When I say gone, I really mean gone, as in I wasn't in control anymore. As the attack started to subside, all I could do was cry in her arms. I was now totally dependent on her helping me with something she didn't understand either. Through the past months of me being off, neither of us really knew what had been going on. I know it's hard to believe, and you'd think we'd have some idea, but in the day-to-day busy lives of parents, it's actually really difficult to pin things down. I eventually calmed down enough to know that something wasn't right. At this point, I didn't really know anything about anxiety or autism, other than that it was something other people had. Little did I know that it would become clear later on. 3. I needed help. Professional, lots of it, and really soon. I was especially struggling with the low mood side of anxiety or depression, whichever it is. On those days, I struggled to stop thinking about and feeling about how lonely I was, how low I felt, and how no one was around. It came in waves of torture and mental pain, leaving you feeling drained and quivering with fear. I went to the doctor the day following my attack. To be honest, he didn't seem that concerned with my symptoms and decided to put me on propranolol. I went back to work that day, at least feeling like I had taken the first step towards sorting myself out. I talked with my bosses and explained what I was feeling, and it made much more sense to all of them as to why it had been a roller coaster these past few months. The next day, and after taking my second tablet, I felt calmer than ever. A very low mood and calm front moved over me mentally. I really don't know how to explain it. It's like being disconnected from your own world and watching it through a window. By day 4 on propranolol, I gave up. It made me feel like I couldn't move, couldn't think, and couldn't live. I was calmer than calm, and in a lower mood than ever. I'd been off work again. I went to work the next day to explain what I'd been taking and that it wasn't going very well. At this point as well, I was still looking for a therapist to help with the mental side of things. It turns out that my bosses hadn't been sitting idle when I've been off. They wanted to help, and one of them proposed I go and visit a therapist that had helped a member of their family in the past. I didn't know what to say at this point and was nearly speechless. I'd never had an employer do something like that before, and I'll never forget it. The following week, I returned to the doctor and said the medication they'd prescribed me wasn't agreeing with me. He conceded and placed me on citalopram. I was grateful for something else, to be honest. 4. It was about a month until my first therapy session. My wife and I had just finished the initial consultation, and although very anxious about what might happen, I felt a little relieved that I was on the right track to get the help I needed. Whilst waiting for the therapy to start, I had to get used to the citalopram. I knew from what the doctor said, and from the propranolol, things may feel worse in the coming days. As the medication ramped up inside of me, I did indeed feel worse in every possible way. I felt nauseous, low, lonely, anxious, shaky, and unwell. After a week, I found myself crying in the bathroom as I felt so low. I knew that I had to keep taking the medication, so after I cried, I took that tablet before I fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up and I didn't feel nauseous. That was the key, it seemed. I still felt all the other things, but it was the physically nauseous feeling that kept me from eating, from working, from doing anything, from fear that I might be sick. I found right then that taking the tablet before sleeping didn't give me the side effect during the day. That was massive for me. Over the next 2 weeks, the other things started to iron out a little, and I felt less tired, and my body felt more like I was in control of the physical side of things again. Now, I wouldn't say that citalopram works wonders. I was only on the lowest dose, which was my choice. No doubt if I had started with the larger dose, maybe things would be different. It did, however, let me start to lead a better life though, that's for sure. I returned to work a week before my first therapy session and started putting some meaningful hours in. I was far from being fixed at this point, but it was a start, and when I could, I did my best. 5. Fast forward to my first therapy session. This first session was just an opener, if you like. The therapist used it to establish who I was, what I liked, what I didn't like, and so on. We talked about general things, my family life, kids, what I did day to day. It was actually nice for someone to ask these sorts of questions, as nothing was deep, I didn't have to think too hard about if it would affect me mentally, and it relaxed me into the session pretty well. When the session came to a close, I was a little scared. I felt quite heavy about an hour afterwards, which shocked me a little. I knew the anxiety was back, I just didn't know why at this point. I knew that I was doing the right thing, and I knew that I needed to make a real effort going forward to do as much in the sessions that followed. Of course, going to these will become very important down the road to my dealing with things. A week later, I went back for the second session. I was really nervous at this point. I thought back a couple of months when I attended a reflexology session to see if it would help stop me being so anxious. I sat in the chair for 40 minutes and didn't let her touch me. I was so nervous that I didn't want to try it, just in case something might actually happen. I knew that I had to push things like this out of my head and concentrate right now and participate in this fully. Otherwise, there was no guarantee it was going to do anything. This session, we talked about family life and my childhood. We discussed some techniques that I could begin to use. I'll explain those in the following sessions. I will tell you two of the main things that will help almost anyone feeling anxious right now though. First of all, just breathe. Feel your chest, really feel it. In and out. Close your eyes if you like, it's up to you. The next part is to breathe in whilst counting to 4, then breathe out whilst counting to 6. This is one of the best methods of naturally calming yourself down. Trust me, it works well. Secondly, you need to ground yourself to wherever you are right now. This may seem hard, but it really isn't. Just start by touching something, feeling what it is like. Is it soft or hard, cold or hot? Next, look for 4 things you can see around the room and really look at them. Study what shape they are. Are they a square, a circle, even triangle perhaps? Think about where you are right now. Are you safe or in danger? In a comfortable position, or do you need to move? Those 2 things were the first 2 anxiety managing items I learnt to grasp. I've spent a lot of time since then breathing and grounding myself when things got rough. Forcing these questions into your mind when managing anxiety can help a great deal to both provide a stable base for support and to help get your brain rejig itself into reality one piece at a time. Getting them to stick can take some time, so don't give up if you're trying this too, it will eventually work. 6. Whilst citalopram was working on my physical symptoms, therapy was jostling with the mental ones. By the time I started the sessions, I was more ready to talk to someone, and I think this is key. You need to be willing to talk no matter how much it hurts or what happens after you do it. Talking to someone is one of the most important steps of letting your brain work through the problem. My therapist went through various things with me, and we developed a good relationship which made it easier for me to talk, express my feelings for things and get into the deeper side of what was going on in my own head. Ah yes, my head. It was definitely the case that the box had been tipped over and that things had been spilt all over the place. As I explained earlier, my brain boxed some things it couldn't deal with away at the time. This box got bigger over my childhood and younger adult years, and over time, you forget what happens and get on with your daily life. The problem with this is that your brain can only hold on to so much of this stuff. The symptoms that have been going on these past months were a sign that the box was spilling things such as past events, and they had been triggered. Think of it. I had just moved house, was unhappy with it for ages, work piled up, I was more unwell than usual, I hid from my family, etc. All these things were acting against one another, causing my brain to flood with things from my past, feelings I'd never felt before, emotions of loss, fear, anger and frustration. Your brain does a wonderful job of knowing what these things should feel like. But for me, it's totally different. No happiness for me, sadness doesn't register well, and I actually only knew frustration for many years and not wanting to connect with anybody. 7. So, emotions and feelings. I'll get straight to the point. I don't feel happy like most people do. I smile more when I'm anxious, or when I don't know what to feel. For the best part of my life, frustration has been my main emotional driver. The other reason that citalopram works for me is that it decouples the physical frustration symptoms from the mental ones. This means that my brain gets the correct feedback, not the wrong physical one. So, it means that for some things I can train my brain to work differently. Now, that doesn't mean I'm never happy. I think I am happy sometimes, but I don't really know how to experience it correctly. I'm most anxious when everything is okay. Sounds silly, but it's what happens. If a crisis is happening, I deal with it, normal levels of anxiousness, worry, etc. But if it's a normal day, work is fine, home life is fine, I'm sometimes not all fine. Therapy sessions for me meant that I learnt about what emotions were missing and what my brain was doing to fill in the gaps. It's the hardest thing I've done in my own life so far, I think. After learning what I was missing, I felt quite alone in this world. I mean, there must be others that experience emotions like me, but not exactly. By opening the box in therapy, little by little, I experienced different aspects of my past events, my feelings and emotions, and started to piece together the hows and whys of things. In my brain, I still have the box, but the sessions taught me that it's a two-way street when it comes to what it contains. The box is allowed to show me those past feelings, events, and my body and brain are starting to learn to react in the correct way, as opposed to the ways described earlier. Those past events aren't going anywhere because they're part of me, and this process includes them in the rest of my brain instead of boxing them up again. I'm not even sure if it's possible to box them up, and even if it was, it's definitely not healthy. 8. Fast forward to today. Where am I now with things? I'm still learning, that's for sure. My brain allows me to process those past events, feelings and emotions in small chunks. I have more control over the anxious inputs now than I ever have had before. The best part, though, is that I now know how anxiety works inside me, what triggers it, and what tools I can use to help me in various situations and events that happen in my day-to-day life. This isn't to say that I never get anxious or feel low. I do a lot of the time. The thing it does do, though, is give me some peace of mind that when I feel low or anxious, I know that it will pass. Because it does. It may take hours or days, especially with low moods, but it will. Using the techniques helps a lot, and trying to have fun, to try and laugh. Okay, that's maybe a stretch for happy me, but it does take the edge off sometimes. It's about trial and error some days too, as some things work and some things don't. Every day is different, and you need to take it one day at a time. The rest of this book goes through some things I experienced, solutions to what worked for me, and some discussions when it didn't quite work the way I expected it to. Remember though, discuss anything with your therapy professional first, as they're the best source when it comes to techniques that will help you get the outcome that you want. Section 2. People. 9. Right off the bat, it's an important thing to remember that most people don't understand what anxiety is, what low mood does, or how it affects the person as a whole. Autism is a little better to understand, but the same things apply. Like I mentioned earlier, unless someone can see something physically wrong with a person, they're very unlikely to detect and then actually understand what is wrong. Explaining a broken arm or leg is pretty standard, but to explain that you had a panic attack yesterday is a stretch for most to grasp. Is it like an asthma attack? No. What I tend to tell people who are interested is that anxiety for me means that I will be tired, not able to concentrate, a little fidgety, or will generally want to leave the surroundings I'm in. That does help people a little bit, and some will reply with, "That sounds like autism." It does, and there are some overlap with both anxiety or autism. If you're autistic and something isn't right, you're going to get anxious eventually, thus creating a cycle of sorts. People's responses to this mostly come across with a confusing look on this face. A look that says, "How come you're doing this advanced task? Shouldn't you be at home?" Yeah, heard it all before. Somehow having anxiety or autism means that I need to sit under a blanket on my couch for the rest of my life. Yes, I do feel like that some days, but it's not really the point. For most people, I start with, "I'm okay." This sorts the people that do want to know from those that don't. I've changed my inflection of that response a lot over the past years to indirectly tell someone how I'm feeling. Some people pick up on it and some run a mile to get away. Not everyone has the time, energy or understanding to really know how I feel, and that's actually okay with me. I don't want to impose my own sense of what's going on onto them. Everyone has their own problems in life, so unless you ask me further, I won't tell you what's going on with me today, even though it's been a positive one. 10. Got a little task for you. Pick a person in your life, just one. Imagine trying to explain to that person that you don't feel well, but you don't know what's wrong with you. The longer it lasts, the sadder you get with it. You don't know why. You tell your person and they don't really get what it is either. They want to support you, maybe hug you, tell you it's okay, but at this point, they don't really know either. You last like this for a week, maybe you've been off work for the last 3 days, sitting on the couch under your blanket. Yes, that blanket, unfortunately. Your person is getting worried. You're not right, but what can they do? They don't know why you're off your food, and it's not like you have a bug or a cold that can help to diagnose why you're like this. Looking at the statistics for mental health, this is a common type of scenario. It's not that person's fault. They haven't been told about the tools they can use, and it's never been taught to them that something like this could ever happen. My wife was in this scenario, and it's far from being her fault. She didn't understand the connection between the mental and physical sides of anxiety, how they interact, and what triggers were happening in my own day-to-day life. As I had started therapy sessions, I then came home and spoke to her about what I'd talked about, the techniques I could use, and we just went from there. One day, I noticed a difference in her response. I had said, "I'm not doing so well today." A typical thing I'd say to let her know that I'm either feeling low or just anxious with something. My wife's response changed on this day from, "Oh, okay, let me know if I can help," to, "What do you think it could be?" This was really important because it showed that she had learnt enough about things to know what to ask, to know that it was something going on inside me, and she knew how to process and understand my response. Can anyone learn about anxiety and low mood? Of course. It really is important that everybody does. Without knowing, it can be easy to either help or hinder someone struggling with anxiety, because sometimes even they don't know what's best for them in the moment. Don't let anything put you off being there for someone though. It's one of the best things you can do. Just be with them. You don't have to talk or do anything special. Just sit and listen. If they want to talk, they will. Learning all the other stuff will come with time, but for now, just be in the moment with them, for them. 11. These days, with the knowledge already that many people don't understand about anxiety, low mood or autism, there is also the social media influence that plays a massive role in either helping or hindering someone who deals with it on a daily basis. Social media's original goal was to help people get news and information quickly and safely. Of course, it's not like that today. You'd get one post of worthy content, Dave and his new puppy. One post of suggested content, we think you'd like a new car. And 2 adverts. Need a lawnmower? Get 20% off today. Amongst these are some posts that people have just clicked share on. The sharer hasn't read the post. Rather, that looks cool. Click, share. More often than not, it's from someone who thinks they're helping spread a good thing. Sometimes the post reads, "One hug from the right person takes all your stress away." Or it could be, "Better to be strong than pretty and useless." So I can't be pretty and strong or hug everyone? Posts like this, and there are plenty of them, have likely been written by those who have never been fearful, never had panic attacks, or heard of the term low mood. Unfortunately, this is just the way it is, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm just saying that it's not that accurate a picture of real life, nor does it represent most of the mental scenarios that float around in your own mind. So, for me, just take social media posts with a pinch of salt. Yes, we are all in this together, but what you may find is that most people don't know what this actually is. If, on the other hand, you're talking to real people on social media and getting involved with talking, listening, and sharing things, carry on, as this is the better way to use these platforms and tools. 12. I like to think that I've learnt lots over the past few years about people and my own journey with anxiety and autism. One area that I've been struggling with is when someone wants to do something with me. It could actually be anything: watching TV, going out, moving the furniture, etc. It took me a long time to figure out why I wasn't just happy to let those events happen as normal and why they always ended up taking me by surprise. I grew up being very independent with myself and the things that I did in school, in my work, and with people around me. I used to take on all sorts of things, and I always remember feeling better when I did it. I remember being let down so much over the years that I needed to do everything myself and that it had to come from my thoughts and through me. It sounds like a control type thing, but it isn't. I'm not mean to people, I'm just generally sure that I needed to do this thing. Although, sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. I've got to have some flaws, right? I guess. When someone suggests doing something, my mind used to work overtime. Think of it like a fight or flight scenario. You just have to be ready. The problem goes further though, as I took it on as a life task. Everything in my life had to be like this for years. I had to know where I was going, when we'd be back, times, dates, activities, etc. This overthinking was causing serious issues with my mental health at the time, and I had to get some help and change how I dealt with the incoming things to my mind. So how do you calm this down to a more manageable level? This issue that I had was that I wasn't breaking anything down into a smaller level. All the things I was thinking about were muddled together, linked to each other, and I couldn't think about them separately. During my therapy sessions, we talked about this type of overthinking. Your brain likes to know what's going on. Think of it when you're in a room and a light goes on. Your brain is like, oh, what's that? Eyes, contract, save yourselves, head, move to the source, and other things. This would be one thing to think about, perfectly manageable for most people. Then, what if at the same time, a person walks into a room? Okay, that's two things going on. Then a dog barks, a door slams, and the light goes out. Already, in such a simple scenario, so many things have your brain's attention. In these types of scenarios, you have to think about training your brain or to desensitize it a little. See, you're only really interested if someone comes into the room. You don't mind the light coming on or the dog barking. Why? Because we know that those things do that. It's the overthinking part that tells your brain, hey, this is more than just a bark. Pay attention and get ready to do something. Train your brain to help overthinking can be done in a couple of ways, but you do have to be in it to win it, I'm afraid. There isn't a quick fix either. With time and determination, however, it's possible to desensitize yourself and limit the overthinking. Try this. Close your eyes and concentrate on the noises around you. Just listen to them and hear what your mind has to say about them. Are they comforting, frightening, bland, or nothing at all? Next, just work out what you're hearing. Sometimes we forget what things really sound like and our mind fills the gaps incorrectly leading to more fear or anxiety. Don't forget, we're looking to lessen our own fight or flight response here, so take your time and work on the small things at a time. After 2 or 3 minutes, open your eyes. What you've just accomplished is to let your mind talk back to you. It can share its fears, its mental state, and its happiness, all just through hearing, nothing else. It's no wonder that people can be overwhelmed by sensory information. Too little of it, and we feel lonely, low, or fearful. Too much, and it really is too much detail all in one go. We only used 1 sense above for a short period of time, but we have 5 altogether working together. They all send information back to our brains. Once it arrives, it's up to us to grab it first, before the brain has a chance to go, that's not good, or nobody likes me, I'm alone, and actually interpret that data correctly. Alternative should be, I don't like that smell, but I know what it is, so everything's okay. Or, I'll take some time for myself, and I can go and see anyone I want to, when I'm ready, as I'm in control. That word control is an important one, and we have to do some manual control along the way if we want to start changing what our brain tells us. 13. In a lot of places, you'll hear people say that 13 is an unlucky number. It may be the case, but how much of that statement do we take as true? Do you avoid walking under things, breaking mirrors, or even opening an umbrella in the house for fear of the bad luck that might come because of it? Do you think people want to help us not get the bad luck, or is it just something people say? Think fast is another thing something people say too. Okay, they're slightly exaggerated ideals, but it does leave a lot on the table about how other people can influence us. Let's wind back a little and talk about the old trying to be quiet when you end up making more noise scenario. For a lot of people, it gets them every time. What happens with us when we try and be quiet, and you're trying your hardest, right? We step on something, hit something, or the dreaded knocking something over. Turns out you're actually trying too hard to do that task. Your brain does that overthinking in the background, so you can't actually focus on what you need to. Walking. It's kind of like walking on stepping stones or missing cracks on the pavement. You don't need to know the path layout 100 meters ahead. You only need to know the next 2 foot positions. If your brain starts to do more in the background, it becomes a waste of time and energy. I've found tasks like this really hard to focus on before. Anxiety or my fight or flight system would kick in and then kick me into next week before I realised what was happening. In my therapy sessions, I realised that I needed to give my brain something to do so that it didn't waste time doing things I didn't need it to do. This kind of works like a second task, and many of us do it without thinking about it. Driving a car and listening to the radio, that's your 2 tasks. You're driving, but your brain is listening to the music. Yes, it sounds stupid, and how can it possibly be that way? But you sing along to the music, so it does work. We all need to concentrate on things, but usually we try and concentrate on only one thing at a time. And I'm not saying this is bad for some people, but for others, it doesn't help get your brain into the right mode. Your brain sees this single task, that it gives more time to move, to start overthinking about other things, and to start changing those chemicals that go around your body, either for help or hindrance. Say you need to do something simple, like the washing up. Now, most of us don't really enjoy it, and as you look at it all stacked up, the dread sets in that it's going to take absolutely forever to wash it all. In reality, you've probably got 5 cups, 6 bowls, 20 pieces of cutlery, and some other random bits, maybe a saucepan or a pan. The thing is though, that your brain didn't have anything else to do whilst you saw that and had to dig through it. It thought of all the other things that you needed to do, other people who could be doing it instead, and asking you repeatedly, "Why do we have so much washing up? It will never be finished, and I don't want to do it." Whilst you do your task that you need to concentrate on, for instance, the washing up, think about some passive things that you can give your brain to do alongside. You can talk to your other half, kids, friends, talk to your pets, listen to the radio, watch the TV if you're lucky to have one in your kitchen, phone someone using the hands-free of course, look out the kitchen window because as we know, most sinks are right against the window. It does seem silly, but all of these things will let your brain think about doing that rather than bugging you with the overthinking part. 14. People can help you. As I said previously, I used to be a very independent person who didn't let anybody else do anything for them. This actually caused me a great deal of mental suffering, and I had to work hard at letting at least someone help me with the day-to-day things. We all need help with things, but I know it's really difficult either feeling like you're putting something on other people's shoulders or that it's not you doing the thing in the first place. People need each other to care for, to love, to do things for, and to be there when it counts. From a young age, my emotions were lacking, like being content or happy, sad or grateful. I didn't know when someone really wanted to help or do something for me. I kind of thought at the time, they don't want to help, or why would they help me? The emotional response to their requests to help me was just to become frustrated with them. I couldn't even begin to tell you why this was the case. I didn't really know, it just was. It was as if that was the only emotion I was able to give out with enough force. Being frustrated with everyone just led to things starting to become worse, and I had to make a change. I knew I had to learn the response from scratch, and I had to learn how to use them. I looked at what other people did in response to happy things, sad things, angry things, etc. At this time, I was also living with my other half, who has a very outgoing personality. She taught me things to keep my frustration in check, to not show it straight away. Over many years, I learnt about being happy, content, and really when to feel sad or frustrated. When someone asks me something new, I now take a second or two to think about it, really think about it. This not only lets my brain talk to tell me what's wrong, but it lets me correct it if my brain is wrong. Hopefully that makes sense. This helps massively with talking to people, to dealing with things that might cause me anxiety, and to let others in and help me more often. Of course, I still feel frustrated inside sometimes. We all do, and it's a normal emotion to some scenarios. I still feel the anxiousness when people mention certain things. For me, it's anything to do with travel or moving house. Those are my two main triggers, and it will take me many more years of learning not to let my brain handle those questions or help when it's needed. Section 3. Getting out. 15. So, one night your mate messages you. They've found an event they know you'd like to go to. A big event. In another country, in another time zone. Okay, I'll admit, it's a little over-exaggerated, but it could happen. For most of us though, it's usually something along the lines of a friend asking you if you want to come to another friend's house, a bar, or just to hang out. Of course, you'll say yes, right? People view anxiety and autism in different ways, and its effects widely cross on certain aspects of their lives. When an opportunity like the one above comes along, things aren't always an easy yes or a no. Let's take a look at both sides of the coin. 16. Overthinkers like me, for instance, have already started to think about both answers before the question above has finished being answered. Why? Well, You see, we like to have control over what we do, where we go, and we want to know what might hurt us or where other people are in relation to us. The above isn't about controlling others, only ourselves. Living the way we sometimes do, doing the things that keep us prepared, is usually the only thing we know how to do 100% right. It helps keep us informed to our options and possible outcomes. The issue with that is, it isn't always correct, and it misses the mark more often than not. Okay, we say yes. Right, cool, let's go. What do I wear? Will I still go? Can't I just stay at home? Have I eaten? I want to sit in the corner. Help! What time is it? I need to stay home. I can't stay there. We'll only go for half an hour. What time do I need to leave? Can I come an hour later? It's dark. Where am I going? My bed looks pretty good right now. Do I need a taxi back? I can't make it. Hide! As you can see, this isn't an organised list of things you need to do. It's both a good list and an unfortunate hindrance to what you want to achieve. Normally, your brain is pretty good at doing things in a linear fashion. This means that it thinks about one thing, gets it over with, and moves on to the next. Add anxiety or autism to the mix, and you've got a mess waiting to happen. Let's look at some of the questions from the list and see what happens next. What time is it? Is it day? Night? Am I already late? If it's a day event, my clothes will be different to the night event. How long do I have till it's time? Then 5 minutes later, the overthinking cycle starts again. Where am I going? Do I know the place? Do I know everyone that will be there? Do I know where it is? Can I get back? Is it a safe place? Is it loud, quiet, light inside, dark inside? Is it a stuffy place? Will I be able to take my coat off while I'm there? Can I keep it on without anybody realising? Like the above, this comes up again and again when other questions are asked. As you can tell, a lot of these things cause the same questions to come up over and over, and you're almost doomed to repeat it. 17. So, you said, "No thank you," to their invite. Somehow, you thought this end of the deal was better. Less stress, you thought. I'll feel better, you're thinking. It doesn't work that way most of the time though, I'm afraid. Your questions are different, but the same things happen, just like the yes option. Will they think I'm horrible? Do I change my mind? Help! Why can't I make myself go? How can I live like this? Help! I can't stay all night. No one wanted to come with me. Will they ever invite me again? I've ruined my friendships. Over the years, I've been in the above position many times. You don't want to go because you don't know how to talk to people. You don't know when to butt into a conversation or when to stop talking once you've started. You fear that they won't like what you have to say, or even if you start talking at all. Your brain has overthought it so that you don't need to go, so you don't. This position, just like the yes position, is just another side of the same coin for those with anxiety or autism to be in. We think it's better to stay away sometimes, not to get into things we can't think through 100% of every detail. We suffer with living in those 5 minutes for hours, overthinking every little detail, working out if we can make it work somehow. It's kind of like defusing a live bomb. Every second counts against us. 18. So, how do we break both of these positions so it doesn't feel like that anymore? Remember, back in chapter 13, I detailed how the brain likes to do things and what can happen when it goes astray. Turns out, something else happens too. You can't remember anything. Your brain really likes to keep your memories and thoughts organised, and it tries its best whilst you get on with your day-to-day tasks. The problem with that though is that when certain anxiety or autism traits come into play, the memory saving system gets disrupted. Think back to the above task of the washing up. You're at the sink, washing a plate, and your wife, husband, son, daughter comes in and asks you a question. Once they're done and go away, What do you do next? You wash the plate. It doesn't matter how far through you were before, you start washing it as though you just put it in the sink. This means that when you come to do things, your brain tries to fill in the blanks. We talked above about doing only one thing, but your brain wants to do more, and sometimes it tries to trick us. It doesn't know it, but the brain needs time to process, and if it doesn't get that time, things can go wrong. Washing the plate could be the most important task in the world, but your brain can still make you think otherwise by interfering with those signals around what's around you and how you think you feel. The complications of this doesn't affect most people, but sometimes it can show itself to even the most confident, most determined of us by getting you to wash that plate again. 19. Remembering things is a multi-step process. Our brain is so complex, and no one still understands how it works entirely. Although I'm not qualified to help you remember things, I can give you some advice on what might help you. Getting the brain to remember things is a little like habit forming. To form a habit means that you need to do the same thing at the same time every day or even every hour, depending on what you want a habit for. Some things can help get the job done, from an alarm, a habit app on your phone, a phone call from someone to remind you, etc. Let's go back to the going out section above. You will either want to go or not go, but a normal person won't have as many thoughts going through their head about the reasons why not it happened, or what would have happened if they did. The only thing I would say worked for me was to go out by myself on my own terms. That may sound like the wrong thing to do, and I thought that too for many years. I needed control to be on my side, and the best way I found to do that was to go out when I was ready, either by myself, put in a call to a friend to come with me. Even writing this, it sounds wrong, but I'm telling you it's the best thing. Whilst I'm out, my brain is recording, logging the events around me, what it feels like, looks like, smells like. It can then use this information next time to build a more realistic picture of whether going out or staying in will endanger me or keep me from doing the things that I'm trying to have a better grasp of. So, I go out more now. I still don't like crowds, too many loud people or cramped places when I eat. However, if it is on my own terms, it makes it more bearable. I control how I got there, how I'm getting home, who I'm with, where I go, when I leave, etc. All these things take their chance to cause some overthinking, and every one that I can squash makes things that little bit better. Now, I know that control isn't everything, and in a lot of situations, you'll feel like you're not in control. This is normal, and most people feel it to some extent. What makes people like us the exception, though, is that those things above result in our lives being disrupted. Hopefully through reading the above section, you're aware that this isn't an end-all be-all scenario anymore. 20. The next part of getting out is to remember that everyone has a limit. You actually have two of them. They work to keep you safe and to stop you doing things that you really don't want to do. As you might have guessed, those limits are in the brain, and they aren't necessarily 100% right all the time. The first limit is all about what you can do or what you want to do. These are things you get joy from or feel happy doing. People generally want more of this in their lives, so to seek things out that extend this limit is normal and encouraged. However, this limit does have a dark side. It's partially responsible for those emotions you feel when you didn't want to go out in the scenario above. It can push a little too much at times, and then you feel overwhelmed or anxious, which can have a lasting effect after the moment once it's passed. The second limit is the one most people come across. The limit hits in when you don't want to do something or see someone or go somewhere. This limit is responsible for much more suffering in day-to-day events. Its hold is harder, colder, and can leave you feeling like you've missed out, lost things, or generally useless at life. The above isn't supposed to scare you into thinking awful things. It's to educate you and help you understand more of what happens when we're faced with things that we want to do but either feel we can't do or that we'll lose some control if we do. As I said, those limits exist for plenty of reasons, but as part of remembering things, the brain has to retrain itself to recognise when something is right or wrong. That's right, your brain has just become a kid again. Everyone worries and stresses about things. This has kind of been accepted as normal, but it shouldn't be. An example would be that I don't like to fly. I know it's okay, and I'm not actually afraid of the plane or flying. I'm afraid of the airport, the crowds of people, and the stuffy, enclosed atmosphere. For the moment, just take one of those things, say the crowds or people, or the atmosphere. Either go out by yourself or with someone else under your control and experience that one item slowly and give yourself time to learn about it, to understand it, and to correct your brain so that the next experience, your brain can place it a closer limit to I'm happy doing this instead of I really can't do this. It really does make all the difference, and you can feel like you're moving forwards instead of sideways. Section 4. Things. 21. In the daily life of the average Joe, he or she will have things they rely on, things they use, or things they feel they can't live without. Some days, when you feel the anxiety coming, it pays to have things around you that you can see or do just to remind you that you're in control of what's going on. Take a Rubik's Cube and turn one edge around. The way it feels just encourages you to turn it another way, to turn another edge, and keep playing. This type of thing we can use to help us keep moving when it feels like we're stuck during the day. 22. I'll give you a small list of things that I use as tools. Funny TV shows, movies, games console, Sudoku puzzles, reading, taking a nap, going on a walk, doing some photography, listening to music, sitting in silence and breathing and listening. This is by no means all of them, but a lot of these things can help. When I talk to people about anxiety, they kind of look at you a little strange when you say you need to sleep during the day or when you just need half an hour to chill. It's a similar story when you say you're overwhelmed and need to take a break to chill or recharge. People tend not to understand or connect the dots well enough about what goes on and how anxiety interacts with the physical parts of the body. The list above can be used in various combinations. Some things are useful after I've experienced certain events, feelings, or generally when I'm feeling low. However, with that combination of things I'm doing, it makes it easier to cope with what else is going on around me and helps my brain recharge quicker to be able to overcome it. 23. Scenario time. I went to Amsterdam last year. I love that place, and I would go and live there tomorrow if I could. I go for the music, the streets, and the people. I'm being serious when I say that I really don't do people, but Amsterdam just feels different and everything just feels good. Anyhow, I fear travelling a lot. I don't do travelling. I don't do being away from home, and I don't do this very often. In my brain though, I know where I'm going, I know the area, I know where I'm staying, and I know the venue that I'm visiting. So what's the problem? When I go anywhere, I have to remember the things in the list above to really remember that they're available to help me, to give my brain some time to adapt, to learn its surroundings, and to be in that space. 24. Having this access to all things isn't a be-all strategy for help. Sometimes your brain gets it wrong. Lately, I've been really concentrating on why I feel the way I do about travelling before I actually do it. This is hard, as you're trying to force your brain to think about both about the future that hasn't happened yet and past events that might have led you to think about the way it is now. Finding a thing that can help you with this is harder than it seems. A while ago, I bought a book called Happy Confident Me Life Skills Journal. I don't necessarily need my confidence building, but what I did need was a different task for my brain to do, a different thing to fit in with what was going on in the background of my daily life. The book lets you do different activities. Armed with my newly purchased felt tips, I started completing the things the book gives you to do. Whilst doing this, my brain started to work through the backlog, helping me to reanalyze the beginning of the travelling scenario in more detail, without feeling more dread about it. Feeling dread or down or doubt isn't a good thing, but they also serve a purpose. Of course, we know that we don't want to or shouldn't feel like that in this scenario, so something needs correcting. Let's have a look. We pack for 3 days. Check. Passports in the bag? Check. Toiletries? Check. COVID pass? Unfortunately, we still need one of those. Check. The things above to entertain us? Check. Then it starts hitting. That feeling of leaving home. But what is it? I figured out this one for me. I found out that although several things are going on, my main driver for many parts is the physical feelings that happen. My stomach and muscles below it relax, like they really chill out. Along with this, the feeling of needing to go to the loo. Yeah, I'm afraid so. So let's get that right. A relaxed feeling made you feel dread and anxious. Yes. The things I used above as my main tasks meant that my brain could dig deeper into what was causing the feelings and sensations that were cruising around my body. The tasks don't particularly matter, but I did need to be concentrating on them and not focusing on what feelings or sensations I felt, leaving that side of things to my brain. After it detects them, it's time for the hard work and understanding of where they are, which part of me they affect, and how it ties in with other feelings or emotions whirring around. There is a logic to it, and this part did eventually click into place for me, just as it will for you. 25. How does your brain come up with a stress response that's linked to a relaxation feeling or bodily action? A couple of ways that it can happen is as follows. The chemicals in your brain control different things. For instance, adrenaline is present when you're excited and scared. The brain sometimes gets the balance of these chemicals wrong, and therefore we end up feeling anxious when we're excited. Trauma can play a big part of what your brain classes as things as. For example, if you've never been excited or happy generally, your brain can begin to associate the surge of adrenaline as its fight or flight response instead of an excited response. This response is really important for keeping you safe, but you don't need it when you know you should be excited about going on a trip. As time goes on, both of the above may become true, and it can take a long time for your brain to realign with the chemicals at just how and when they need to be released. As I said above, being excited or scared results in the same stuff going around, and it's only really what your other senses are telling you that makes the most difference to how you treat that situation. If you've grown up always being scared, for instance, unfortunately, that's what your first result will likely be when those chemicals get going. It isn't fixed or final though, as that used to be me. 26. The last thing I'm going to say in this section is to have a stopwatch handy. In itself, it's just a lonely stopwatch, but that's the beauty of it. Out in the world around us, people want everything now, yesterday, and lots more tomorrow. The problem with this is that nothing ever really gets thought out or practiced before it comes perfect. I'm not saying that you should waste time perfecting everything, of course not. What I am saying though is that when you feel like you need a minute to rethink or realign the things in your head, take out the stopwatch, go and sit somewhere, and just have a minute. Take a minute to let your brain be itself for that time. It may help you to concentrate on a wall, your breathing, or even to close your eyes. It also doesn't matter where you do this task, a toilet, full room at the office, or on a couch, it's all good. You don't have to talk to anyone, be anyone, or do anything during this time. Just focus on you. Whilst writing this book, I did this many times. Feeling how tight your head muscles are, feeling your chest expand, or how heavy your legs feel can really open your eyes to what you are and what you're feeling. The body and brain mask a lot of things and will try to convince you that you're okay, doing fine, or some other okayism. We know this isn't the case sometimes, so let this quiet minute give you time to connect with your inner you to see how your own food gauge is doing. A minute goes quickly, so use it wisely. Section 5. The Future. 27. Everyone has their own ideas about mental health and what people should do about it. It's in everybody's interest to have good mental health skills and to know when enough is enough and when they need some help. Society has a massive stigma when it comes to mental health, and many people believe it's fake, not real, or that people are doing these things to gain attention. If someone passing in the corridor has asked you how you're doing today and you've said, "I'm fine," with a smile, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you're reading this, either for you or for someone else, get some help. It doesn't even matter what type of help at this stage, just reach out to someone professional. You may not have the money to do this, and I know that it can be very expensive, but please don't let that put you off. In the UK, you can self-refer for the NHS mental health programme, which does work for some people, and they do a good job at making sure that you can get help. They do, however, have a waiting time, so most people tend to go private, which can be quicker and more suited to your individual needs. 28. So, what about me? Do I still struggle with anxiety? The short answer is sometimes, but the long answer is much more than that. I used to struggle with life in general, seeing people, going out, and just generally doing things that I actually wanted to do in my life. I always felt like I was trying too hard, doing too much, and not resetting my brain for the next day. When I met my wife and had our son, I realised I'd forgotten about my childhood traumas that I needed to deal with, but I didn't know what to do. 9 years later, I couldn't carry them boxed up anymore and was slumped on the bed in tears because of it. I needed help, and I wish I could have read this book at that time. I got in touch with a therapist, which in the first instance gave me more stress to deal with, as it was another thing I needed to do. After my first couple of sessions, the hard work really started. Going through the thoughts, the feelings, and the frustration really opened my eyes to what we keep in our brain and how it affects what we do in our daily lives. After about 9 months of regular sessions, I started to get rid of some of the extra stress and anxiousness that surrounded me. I learned the tools to help me replace it with something better, something more productive, and to give it an exit instead of it being boxed up inside me. The way my brain has worked since has taught me a lot about myself. Going into therapy with only being able to express a frustrated emotion, I discovered that I'd also been suffering from high-level autism. My wife and I had always thought I suffered from it, but because of the anxiousness I always felt, it was a garbled mess and got missed. After retraining my brain to recognise feelings like happiness, sadness, being relaxed and content, the autism side made itself more clearer. Things that I had been doing day to day were much clearer, and I felt like I'd made real progress. 29. I still have sessions. Yes, I know what that sounds like, but hear me out. Originally, my sessions were because of the awful things that I needed to get out of my head. childhood, school, home, work, etc. all needed to come out and go back in organised and put away correctly. This took a couple of years and I felt much better for doing it. After about an 8-month break, I had an idea of going back to therapy to help me with the last two things I suffer with: autism and being away from home. Yep, those things are two very tightly linked, which is kind of why I don't like airports. I wanted some help with just the autism part of my life so that I could go out in the scenario above. Over the course of a year, I learnt about being more social. I learnt better ways to feel about certain things, and most importantly, learnt not to feel so caged up and alone whilst doing those things. You have to understand, for me, being at home is my safe place, and anywhere else takes a long time to adjust to. So, I go along to a therapy session once a month and empty my head. I go through everything that's happened in my life. This isn't to boast or to reveal anything. All I'm doing at this point is reorganising everything and letting my brain put it to bed. I feel that helps me process things, learn some more of the obscure feelings and emotions about what's been going on and talked about. As I'm not a very outgoing person, this works for me. That leaves the question, how do I separate anxiety from panic attacks from autism? I suppose I define it in the following ways. Anxiety will creep up on you, slow or fast, but at some point I know that it's a level I can feel. My chest and head muscles contract and my stomach muscles move more, causing pain. My brain forgets things and my general mood shifts into a negative, low-feeling position. If it keeps building, at some point I know I'll need to change what I'm doing and go and do something else before my anxiety gets worse. Panic attacks will come sharply and quick. My breathing gets worse significantly. My brain is not responding to calls to stop overthinking, and my chest and head hurt like someone's squeezing them. I know it will pass soon, but for now I have to occupy myself and not concentrate on the mental images that happen. Autism comes in two flavours for me. Sometimes it's like a dull prod, prodding me somewhere on my chest or back. Sometimes it's a full-on kick to the same area, which I take note and do something about. Autism seems to have a different way of alerting me to what it's thinking, different from anxiety. It reminds me of those limits I mentioned earlier, but when they're closer. Sometimes you'll find it really hard to differentiate between the different things going on in your head. Don't worry at that point about trying to figure out if it's anxiety, autism, something else. Just focus on bringing your brain back to its normal functioning state. 30. So that's about it. I hope you made it this far and that you got something out of reading about my adventure with anxiety and autism. There are times when I wish it would just all go and bug someone else, but for the moment at least, I feel good that I have come to be able to manage it in order to live a better life. Living with anxiety and autism is kind of a curse and a blessing. Some days it can hound you a little bit, making you feel on edge or that you're on a tightrope. On the days where it doesn't bother me as much, I do take more notice of what's going on around me, how I really feel about those things, and how I keep my overthinking brain under control with a greater ease. I'll say this only one more time. If you feel stuck, get some help and talk to someone. It really doesn't matter who you talk to in the first instance. Just talk. Get it out. I promise you'll feel better in the future. Thanks for listening.